streaming. Alrighty. Where's the link? Receiving your content in a moment. I believe we are live. We are live. I see us on the screen. Now, I just need to wait for that lovely tweet. There it is. Let's go ahead and give that link to the people in the former chat so that they can understand how to do this, and then we'll be able to actually start this. Alrighty. Thursday, November 15th.
A great day.
From what I hear, this is a special day for us. So
it is the birthday of one Karl Anthony Towns. Happy 23rd birthday, Karl Anthony Towns.
Happy birthday, Karl Anthony Towns. Happy birthday, Fast Eddie Fear.
Oh, shit, you're right. Yeah, that's true. It's been a good one. It's been a fun one.
Has it? Have you had a good birthday?
I did. My wife is a sport.
Good. I'm glad you've had a good birthday.
She likes photography. Photographs.
Well, that's exciting. We've got a 3-gamer here.
We do. A nice 3-gamer after like 10 consecutive days of the NBA really, really being excellent for fantasy. With like 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 7, 6, 5 for like 10 days in a row. The last 3 days, 3, 11, 3. It's like, okay. I don't like either of those. So basically, I feel like you're a woman going to a bar, picking up random guys. Neither 3 nor 11 is what you're looking for. Anything in the happy median. Like, you don't need to be picky, but
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's just start it off. Rockets and Warriors. We could take our time, get through this. I have the Rockets with a 110 implied total, Warriors 106. We have word that Draymond Green is potentially on a minutes limit, whatever that means. And then, I don't know. We have a Houston team that has been super weird so far this season. Let's start with the Houston side of it first. We had a little bit of discussion before we started the show regarding Kevin Durant's expected ownership and James Harden's performances against Golden State in the past. I'm having trouble getting with too much Harden and too much Chris Paul and not as much Kevin Durant as I actually like. And I think you agree with all of that. So let's talk about Harden to start. What are your thoughts on Harden here coming into Golden State?
I think he's fine if Kevin Durant didn't exist, but I just have Kevin Durant as a better play in every way. So if you want to play James Harden as clearly the second highest scoring potential player on the slate, although you can make a Jokic argument, but if you want to play Harden and Durant, that's fine. I can see that working out. And with the news in Atlanta, certainly I think enough value is opened up to support that. But playing Harden and not Durant in your one lineup, I'm very close to just calling a mistake. This harkens me back to the conversation we had with Giannis against the Warriors, whatever that was, a week 10 days ago. And that was the day I said, look, I'm just not playing Giannis. He's never been good against Golden State. Steve Kerr is a good coach. They have several good defensive players who can key in on a guy, and they're very Patriots Belichickian in their ability to erase number one options. And you're dealing with the team in Houston that applies approximately as much as it does when you're talking about, say, Giannis. And they have enough tools to, really focus on him with Clay and Durant. And he hasn't had 60 fantasy points against them in 10, 12 tries. It's something like that. He didn't get to 60, I know, in the entirety of the 7-game series last time, including several games without Chris Paul, where he got towards the upper 50s. But got, 57 without Chris Paul, 59 without Chris Paul, if I remember. Several other games, high 40s, low 50s. I don't mind. And at ownership, this would change my mind completely. You tell me there's correctly, I think, 40% Kevin Durant and 20% James Harden. Then I'm sitting here looking at it and going like, yeah, okay. Now I have to sit here and think about this for a bit. Mm-hmm. But if you have Harden projected over Durant or those guys projected similarly, I like Harden's floor more. I like Harden's ceiling more. I like Harden's usage more. I like Harden's defensive matchups more. With the losses on this Houston team.
You just said you liked all of Harden's stuff more. You
I
meant Durant, correct?
Yeah. Sorry, it's the birthday thing. It's all the sex.
Just making sure that
I
the
didn't
viewers are getting it.
Reverse course right in the middle there. No,
Okay.
That would have been odd. Yeah. So, Durant without Curry is just a very, very solid thing. We got, as close to the floor game as you're going to get recently, and nobody is. I guess it's this on a 3-game slate. You're trying to plant your flag somewhere, and if you're telling me Kevin Durant, who for me I had as the highest scoring player by 7 points. You had, I think, by a couple other people I know had them close and had him very similar to James Harden. But Harden in the matchup, looking at that entire playoff series last year, never got to 60 during the regular season, never got to 60. And that's when both these teams were playing a metric butt ton faster.
Yeah.
So I just don't think that why is this where he randomly cracks that streak open? Is it possible? Sure. There's not a 0% chance he gets 60 or 70 or 80. It's James Harden. He can just go. You can get, he can go in the lane, get 2 fouls on Clay real quick. They can do a great job of, back screening Kevin Durant. He can keep getting open and you can get 80 out of James Harden. I'm certainly not going to be shocked, but looking at the ownership with what we expect to have ownership on Kevin Durant and James Harden, I would be way, way over on Kevin Durant and way under on James Harden. That's just where I come down.
That's where I want to be mentally.
All right, Albert is in. Sweet. Now we can get away from Capella, who's the next guy we want to get away from. That's exciting.
But that's a guy I don't have to get away from. I essentially don't have him.
Okay.
Give me your reasoning as to why you're not getting to Clint Capella. Is it a preference of other centers or is it a matchup based thing?
It's a combination of things. It's an ownership thing. Like James Harden is not objectively about. Let me quantify this a little better because I tend to speak very sort of ephemerally, and there are numbers to back this up. But this is not a horrific spot for James Harden. Yeah. He has a very safe floor of around 45. Is going to give you 45 to 53, some 65% of the time. Is priced well down for his price. I mean, on FanDuel, it's not even close for me, but on DK, that number has obviously come down and is perfectly tolerable. There's nothing really wrong with playing James Harden, but I'm looking at our ownership projections, which I don't do nearly enough. Right now what I'm looking at says that we have James Harden at like 36% and Kevin Durant at 26%. I just find that to be an error. On DK, it's closer where you actually have to spend a few $100s more to get up to Kevin Durant. But just in every way, I project Kevin Durant is a better play, and you're telling me he's 10% less owned. I'm in there. Like it's if I'm making 150 lineups, I probably have, I don't know, 18 Harden and 110 Durant or something like that. Like I wouldn't completely fade Harden. I'd have them next to each other in most of those in game stacks, but yeah, and it works out that way a lot. When you have teams with reasonably equitable offensive distribution that aren't as easy to isolate, it's a bit of a different situation against the Warriors. But not having Steph isn't really going to change their ability to hit a lot of defensive assignments. I mean, it will a little bit. Quinn Cook is legitimately also a pretty bad defender. There are certain things he's better at than Steph, but overall he's probably even worse than Steph, which doesn't bode well for you. And if you're like, I really wanted to play James Harden, there's certainly several things you can argue here. The guys who are taking over Melo's minutes are going to shoot a little less than he is when you're talking about Clark and when you're talking about Ennis. So that's a couple more shots that'll flow to a lot of guys whenever there's shots up to grab. Harden is going to be the number one person to grab those shots. Having Draymond out for some period of time. Like if you're getting 36 minutes of Draymond, that's really bad for Harden and Capella in sort of the same way. Now I think they have a better chance to keep Capella on the floor, which they want to do. So especially 7,000 on DK, I can see still paying Capella's price. And if Capella's out there more, then Harden is better. They have a very nice synergistic relationship. So, thinking that I may only get 26 minutes of Draymond makes me a bit higher on Harden and Capella, but center against the Warriors is generally something you have to be a little careful with. Expecting to have Draymond back, and apparently I'll have at least 80% of the Draymond back, makes them less efficient as a tandem You get just fewer successful lobs in this particular matchup, and frequently you end up with a lot of time with Capella off the floor. Now, your argument for Capella is just the fact that this team has nobody right now. If you look at that last game, especially with Gary Clark, who is gone, who is going to be back, they basically ran a six-man rotation most of that game. Gary Clark had 15 minutes in the last game he played and then was out. Isaiah Hartenstein played 12 minutes, and then six guys played. 32, 33, 36, 37, 34, 41 minutes for PJ Tucker on the top. So that sounds nice. So if you're
not a lot of depth on that Rockets team.
No, not again, the mismanagement of something about getting James Harden on your team is like, which is a shame because I really like the Rockets back office, but some of the offseason decisions last year, I don't. I mean, maybe Chris Paul leveraged. Maybe he's obviously a guy with a lot of voice. Represents the players, and maybe he lobbied for Melo, but yeah, that screwed everything up. For them to cut bait like that quickly is remarkable. That is a remarkable admission of failure on a front office level to just be like, yeah, no, we're about a month into this thing, not happening. no good. We're bad. We're worse with him. Get him out of here. And it's the correct decision. Don't get me wrong. I think at this point, well done. This is not working. We have no reason to think it's going to improve. Forget this noise. No matter how cheap the guy was, get him the hell out of here. But that's concerning, certainly. So, but yeah, that opens up a million minutes. So anyhow, I just want to get back and say, the news about Draymond does make it a little more tolerable to run out Capella and Harden. I'm still a bigger fan of playing Durant than either of those guys. And at this point, I think if Capella's going to have anywhere near the ownership we're talking about, again, I can see how it fails. I really am only worried that he's going to absolutely smash it. I have no interest on FanDuel, where we still have him projected to be fairly popular. I would rather play every other viable center. I think, yes. There are like 5 viable centers.
I was going to say, there's not a laundry list of viable centers going tonight. That's for sure.
Like Capella would be my bottom of that list. I would rather play all the other guys who are just cheaper and other guys more popular. And I'm playing Kevin Durant, so that works out fine for me. So yes, I'm playing Alex Len. I'm playing certainly Jokic, where it's $1,600 more. DK, where it's $2,700 more, or whatever the differential is there. That's a little more sticky. But yeah, FanDuel, I would be some number of lineups in. And again, that's not like if you're playing Capella, you're making a mistake. That's just my personal preference for if I'm trying to beat a 3-game slate. I think the best way to do it is to be like, here's a guy who's going to be popular. I think there's a greater percentage chance of failure than the public is admitting. I'm not going to go here. And the only way you get proven wrong is if you get 46 out of Capella or 61 out of Harden. So there's a number of entries in which your guys still do just fine. You play Alex Len instead, he gets you 27. Okay, that worked. Moving on to the, that didn't kill me, or so. Yeah, takes.
Let's talk about the Warriors side then, because there's not much else to talk about from Houston outside of Harden, Paul, and Capella. I think if you want shares of Eric Gordon, have at it. I'm not confident about it.
I'll speak on that real quickly. Sure. Again, especially FanDuel, the price is nice at $5K, same price both sites. I do think he is still physically encumbered. If you've watched a lot of Eric Gordon, he's normally a guy who has a, really remarkable offensive upside. There were times that he was just dominant with his ability to drive and or shoot, and he's just not shooting well and has had recurrent foot injuries threatening his availability. So whereas people are like, he's washed, I agree he's playing like he's washed right now, but I think of his washness, 80% of it is temporary and based on the fact that his foot is a little jacked up and he's a step slow versus him. I think he's 30. He's 29 or 30 years old. So I don't think he's probably past his prime, but he's, just over the top of the hill. I don't think he's doing the full Carmelo. It's just Carmelo is 34, I think. At that point, guys start to decline pretty noticeably. And I think that's really the largest reason that Melo is bad. There's also
now he is washed.
Yeah, he is. He can fill a role somewhere, but he's not the Carmelo Anthony you remember at all. Like, he's now become a massive defensive liability and limited offensively, and there's just any number of issues there. But I legit think I like Eric Gordon on FanDuel, where he's 5,000, and DraftKings. I'm fine with it. You certainly don't need to windmill him in there. If you're not playing Harden, that makes it stronger.
Yeah.
So that's sort of if you're not playing Harden, Paul, or Gordon, that's a very thin line that none of those guys get there. Like, there is a chance you'd get neither 60 out of Harden, 50 out of Paul, or 30 out of Gordon. it's fairly small.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you better really like Kevon Looney and Alfonso McKinney and stuff, because if those three guys don't get to value, I have a feeling that the Rockets are getting bludgeoned.
Yeah, that's the lineup you're playing, Hartenstein or Gerald Green in, because that's if Gerald Green is playing. I can't remember where his status ended up.
I believe he is a game time decision, and Alex Len is available to play today.
Yeah. No. I mentioned that a minute ago.
Oh, sorry, missed that one.
Yeah, no. That's now I'm saying I brought it up as a way of saying now I can even get further away from Clint Capella if I want to. Clint Capella, I don't mind on drafting. 7,000 is 7,000.
Agreed.
His points per minute time has been perfectly equitable against Golden State. It's around his average across the league. If he plays 36 minutes, which is a real possibility, if for no other reason the fact that they're really shorthanded, yeah, I think he probably gets you 40. And, 40 is very possibly close to the highest scoring. And the DK price is pretty compelling. So on FanDuel, where I legit don't like it because I can just get Jokic for $1,600 more, or now I have some interesting paydown options, DraftKings, it's fine. So, if you have a big exposure to DraftKings Capella, I wouldn't argue with it. There is a reasonably safe floor, and they're just so thin at this point. Hard for me not to like that on some level.
There we go. Golden State side, outside of the big... well, I guess let's talk about Draymond first.
Sure.
Do you want to go there on this supposed minutes limit?
I don't think I want to. I mean, 8K, there's always an upside. I will say... there is a big upside, and the ownership should be nominal. You're going to be looking at getting him at a number he can smash if he gets enough time. Not the best matchup for him, but it's you need the game to stay close. You need him to be productive, which is most of the time this will stay close. He'll be productive some of the time, and you need the minutes to be there. But all those things add up to happening 10% of the time, and his ownership's going to be under that. So I do think you can make an argument for, I think I get 6% Draymond Green or 8% Draymond. I'll check what our current projection are. I'm curious what he comes in at. We have 6%. See, look at that right there. Mind meld me and Osmo's algorithm. So yeah, I think you can go there. I think you can build interesting centerless lineups where center becomes Draymond Green or Lamarcus Aldridge, and just sort of run the line of I don't like any of the centers.
Yeah,
I'm going to move away from it. I think I think Denver destroys the Hawks, and Jokic, does fine, but gets 40, and Capella's limited and gets 28, and I don't really want to play these other guys in Atlanta, so I'll just, there you go, Aldridge at center or Draymond at center if he has a big game. That ends up being a very, very unique lineup construction.
It really does.
Right. So it's just, okay, if you want to have a lineup there are very few copies of, has Draymond as your center, that's 1 out of 1,000 lineups.
Yeah, there was a time earlier today where I thought I was going to be heavily over the field on Draymond, and that minutes limit, whatever that means, is put in a bit of a seed of doubt.
Yeah, it also puts in a bit of a seed of doubt for me on the entire other thing, Capella and Harden. And there is a real synergy there. If you limit Capella, you limit Harden a lot.
Yeah.
When their relationship with him crashing to the hole is one of the strongest synergistic duos I've seen in watching NBA in my entire life, where when they have that going, very few teams and very few players defend it well enough, and the Warriors and Draymond are one of them. So Draymond, is going to play the whole game. I feel safer saying I'm less worried about the ceilings, because if Harden doesn't have that back door to lay off, then you can guard him a little tighter, and that just makes it less likely he's going to score 70. You keep him down to 60 because he's just not as open, and everything's already running a little slower. And now if I only get 22 minutes of Draymond, I'm like, yeah, all right. And that concerns me a little. So I'm a little less firm, if you will, on that posit.
Yeah, I put him in for 29 minutes right now. I don't really feel comfortable with any sort of pick, so...
yeah, it could be right.
Shrug, I guess.
Yeah, that's a full, 29, sure. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel, too. Do you want to touch on anything else in Houston or Golden State?
I think you can. I don't hate PJ Tucker. I mean, PJ Tucker is going to play 38, 40 minutes. I don't think his ownership will be, I would think 20, 25%. I have no issue seeing PJ Tucker in anything. He makes some sense on FanDuel as even a potential drop, although you don't want your 4,800 to be your drop. But on a 3-game slate, basically when you're playing 2 and 3 game slates, you need to be much less strict with following your normal rules that would upset you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't want to drop a $4,800 guy. Yeah, it's a 3-game slate. You kind of got to let all this shit go. I don't really want to play Chris Paul and James Harden. Yeah, but it's a 3-game slate. You got to kind of let go all the rules of correlation, and the game stacking becomes much better, and everything else you sort of have to just, step back from a little bit. So, running PJ Tucker on FanDuel actually makes a little more sense than running him on DraftKings, because you can still win a tournament with him as your drop, just because you can only have one power forward be good at all. That's one of the weird things about FanDuel and how it aligns with having to play 2 of each position and being able to drop a guy. There's just a real chance that there's only one power forward you want on the entire slate. Like, it's not impossible that you get another pedestrian game out of Lamarcus Aldridge and he gets you 37, and that's not exciting. And, Draymond only plays halftime, and Harrell gets under 30, and Tobias Harris gets 30-ish, and Paul Millsap gets 24 in a blowout. And, there's just could be no good power forwards. It's a real possibility. Not likely, but 20% chance there are not 2 good power forwards. So then it's like, okay, by playing PJ Tucker on FanDuel, I'm giving myself the backdoor of 4 steals and 2 blocks, 11 points and 6 rebounds, 40-point PJ Tucker out of nowhere. But also, the other guys weren't good. So whenever you sort of cast your, I guess the moral is, whenever you're picking this guy, this position as a potential drop target, you're also sort of voting against that position. Like, when you go, shooting guard is so bad, I'm punting it, is not just a statement of, like, I'm willing to hope this guy gets 20, but it's also, I don't think the guys who cost a lot of money get there.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the statement you make when you're like, I'll play PJ Tucker, and Trey Lyles is similar. Sure, you're giving yourself backdoor. He ends up getting 26 minutes against the Hawks because they blow him out, and he actually puts up 32 fantasy points, Trey Lyles, which works. But also, nobody's good. So I spent $4,000 on Trey Lyles, or whatever the hell he costs. So
to the Nuggets and Hawks we go, where I almost did it again. I almost said Tayshaun Prince. Taurean Prince now out for the Hawks. Alex Len expected to play. I'm pretty confident here that I've got more exposure in this game than I do in the other 2 combined. I'm all over this one. I am terrified by that fact, but that's where I'm at. I love Jokic.
Good.
I love everything. I'm going to have heavy exposure to 7 guys from Denver. I'm going to have heavy exposure to 8 guys from Atlanta. A lot of that is just sort of the value opening up, but this is my spot. Give me your likes out of this game. Either side is fine.
Yeah, it again ends up being pretty site dependent. So Taurean Prince is out. Obviously, he missed 1 game previously this year. It was 10 days ago or so against Charlotte. Kevin Porter got the start, played 32. Bembry went up to 29 off the bench. Other guys, I think you had 23 out of Vince, and the high teens for Spellman and Poitras and the rest of the guys there. So now you have Len back in. That makes me be less interested, certainly, in any sort of exposure to certainly Plumlee, and a little bit Spellman, though I think he's still in play in tournaments. But again, that'd be an ownership play. I'll take a look at what we have him projected for. But I do like Bembry on DraftKings a lot. I probably prefer Porter on FanDuel if you're going to play him. Now, Porter played that game, which was 4 or 5 games ago, then sat out the game after that with an issue I don't recall, and then has played minutes in the teens since then. So happy with that play on FanDuel. He's in play on DraftKings. I think he's $3,200 on DraftKings. Could he get the start, play 30 minutes, and get 30 fantasy points again? Yeah, but that really good game he had getting the start was also an artifact of having 4 stocks, I think it was. I think it was 3 steals and a block. I might have that inverted. But he ended up having a pretty good game, but those peripherals were a little bit unlikely for him to acquire, and I do think he's generally a low ceiling player. I think he's going to be closer to your, Brian Arcidiacono than several other value guys who can more frequently put up a ceiling. I like his game. It's solid, but it's not flashy, and I expect him to be sort of laid back. And I'm a bigger fan of the Denver defense than I think most people are. So I would rather play Porter than Bembry on FanDuel, where you're saving, I want to say, $1,300. And again, I've largely penciled in a small forward spot for Durant everywhere. So for that reason, I would have a little less appeal. There's nothing wrong with playing Bembry at 4,800. $4,000 Bembry on DK. I'm pretty solid as one of my favorite value plays of the day over there.
Fantastic on DraftKings.
Yeah, 4,000 is really good. You now have to look at him as having a projection of 30 to 31 minutes. I would pick one of those two numbers, I think, in fantasy points 24, which is pretty good at 4K. You're feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah.
And I think at lower ownership than, say, Monty Morris, who would have a very similar projection, but lower on both numbers for me. Like we saw last game, Monty Morris got over 30 minutes. I think he got 31 last game. I think that is the exception. I think you're more likely to get 26, 28 out of him. And, fantasy point projection for me would, again, be a couple less, and ownership would be higher. So, Morris can play a couple other positions for you. But so I like Bembry over there a lot. You can certainly play Hoarder over there at 3,200. You can absolutely play them both before we get that question. They collectively cost $7,200 on DK. That's no problem whatsoever. FanDuel, I'd be a little less inclined towards it. You're spending some extra money, but still it's absolutely fine. I want to talk about Trae Young for the Hawks for a second. Again, he's gonna, I think he will be, I'm curious what our ownership on him is. I'm going to guess in the 20-ish area. 19. Let's see. Look at this. You and me, Osmo. We're mind meld here. You got him at 19. About 20 is what I expected. There is a real ceiling there. The last time that Bazemore missed, he took not as most shots of the year. He had something in the 20s at one point, but he took 19 shots, which is tied with a couple other games. He took his sort of ceiling number of shots. I like his spot perfectly reasonably well at 20% to have a ceiling game and to hopefully at least not kill you. So FanDuel, he's priced a little better, although he is one of those guys who isn't priced better on FanDuel because he's priced better. He's priced better on FanDuel because he turns the ball over a butt ton, and that's a very bad thing. And you get 8 turnovers, that -8 really sticks it in you. But
it's not great.
Yeah. So yeah, Trae Young, I think I do like a fair bit more without Taurean Prince in there. Okay. And obviously the other guy, especially on DK, is $5,500 Kent Bazemore. He has the tougher, assignment. He's going to deal with the most of Gary Harris, who's the guy I'm most concerned with there. I would rather, again, there's going to be plenty of switching between these two teams. So everyone's going to get some Gary Harris. The largest share will get stuck on Baze, I think. But and I guess the last thing I'll say at the moment is one of the reasons I like Hoarder is I expect his ownership to be kind of non-existent, because I don't think most people will remember he started that last game, and they haven't said that yet, and we're coming up on lock here pretty quick.
We are indeed.
So, so for FanDuel, I like getting Hoarder in there. For DK, hopefully you can hang out for an hour, because we're going to get some more news, and you can keep tinkering with shit. So on DK, have whatever it is, Durant and Gordon and Paul, Durant and Harden, Durant, Paul, and Ennis, Durant, whatever the hell you're doing there, and be ready to pivot. Make sure they're in the top 5 slots. Don't have them in your forward guard utility, because some news will be coming.
Let's transition to a guy that I probably have too much of.
Jamal Murray. No?
Well, yes. Anytime that I have any Jamal Murray, I feel like I have too much Jamal Murray. I'm actually just with the field on Murray right now.
I like him a lot on both sites, honestly.
DK in particular, 6,500 is quite appealing.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from that. The matchup is super. He is the guy who snowballs. And again, that's not a Clerks reference. I'm not talking about a sexual proclivity. I mean that once he gets going, it can scroll into a really big ceiling type of game. And this is certainly an environment where that can happen. So I think the blowout concern here is really legit, by the way, and we should talk about it. I mean, if you have a downside with playing Jokic, it's that you don't think he plays 4 quarters.
Yeah.
This has to be, I think this is like an 11-point line when I looked this morning. Now you've taken Taurean Prince out. It's got to be 13 or 14 thin air going up into Denver, the whole 9 yards, and this Hawks team is bad.
Certainly.
So, I have probably a greater than normal amount of interest in Trey Lyles, in Monty Morris, in those guys where I really think they can do some real damage. So if you're going heavy on the first game or the third game, it's great, because from this game, you say, I think this game blows out. So I'm not getting on the starters really on either team. So I'm taking cheap guys like, say, Len, or some of the value plays in this game, where you take, Morris or, Hoarder, or someone who's playing in a blowout, and use them as value so you can load the studs in the other 2 games. But I think you do sort of, if you're building a lineup, make a stand on if you think this game ends up being competitive.
Definitely. I mean, guys like Kevin Huerter for minimum salary on FanDuel is just sort of a no-brainer. It's easy to plug in someone at the flat minimum now on FanDuel. You don't have to largely pay that much attention, and he can just be. I mean, he can have a very empty stat line tonight in 48 minutes if he wanted to.
I really like that play just because of the ownership, and you're dropping a guy, and it's a game I'm happy not having exposure to. My biggest issue with I'm tinkering with a FanDuel lineup, I'm obviously not going to enter into anything. I always have 3 half-built lineups next to me as the show goes on, and I never really finish them. But my bigger issue is I want to have Porter in there, but I really want to play Jokic at center, and that obviously doesn't make sense. Now, you don't give a shit about Porter at that point. You're just playing Jokic because you think Jokic can be good, and the way FanDuel is priced, he's just priced too damn well compared to, say, Capella, who is sort of the standard for the slate. But I generally want to play like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, and at that point, playing Porter is a little bit counterintuitive if he doesn't get the start, and we may not have that news by lock. And okay.
All right, let's go through Clippers and Spurs now. We'll try to do this. Let's go for 7 minutes, and that'll give us 10 minutes for questions. How does that work for you?
Let's do it.
All righty. Clippers and Spurs. Clippers, pretty sizable favorites at home. 6-point line that I have in here right now, coming off of the Spurs laying an absolute egg against the Suns yesterday, getting beat by 20 in a game where I had 60% Lamarcus Aldridge. So going right back to the well with some Lamarcus Aldridge again tonight. Let's start there. What do you think of Lamarcus Aldridge here against the Clippers?
Love him.
Thank you.
The ownership will be. I'll go look at his ownership now. I bet he's in the teens. I'm gonna go with 16.
You are low.
It's a little bit site dependent, but yeah, they're both in the 20s. A little less interested at that point, but still, I obviously think there is an upside in the matchup. Again, I like attacking this Clips team through the forward spots whenever possible, and the ownership knocked down due to him completely shitting himself yesterday, and so I have no issue with Aldridge. There's no reason the matchup shouldn't be good. He's not prohibitively expensive. The position is obviously ass on FanDuel where you're thinking of playing him. So Aldridge makes plenty of sense to me. It's the biggest thing is its opportunity cost on the money. There's only so many studs, so the more Aldridge you're playing, the less Durant you're playing, and that bothers me. The less Jokic you're playing, and that bothers me. But beyond that, pretty irrelevant observation. Yeah, I have no issue with playing Aldridge in this spot. I think he's, I think I had him projected for 41 when I was tinkering with numbers earlier today. It's hard not to feel good about that.
Yeah, I talked about him in the slam dunks today. Clippers defense has been fantastic, but they're really, really good at limiting threes. Yep. And that's the one piece of the game where I'm not super worried about it. Aldridge lives at the rim in the mid-range for, a decade plus now.
Yeah.
So I think this game can come to him pretty naturally.
Mm-hmm. Plus, they're trying to run Gortat out there again. That helps them. You like that more than other plays that would be in that position. Though he'd shred Marjanovic pretty well, too, I think. Boban, by the way, not out of play as a tournament consideration. I know that sounds crazy. I don't know what the FanDuel price is right now, but DK has gotten all the way back down to 3,600. This game shouldn't be ridiculously fast. I don't love the spot for him, but 3-game slate, Boban would be on the north side of the playable line for me.
He's 4,800 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I can't do that.
No.
I can't. I mean, in 150, you want to have 2 Boban lineups? You're arguing the game stays slow enough and Gortat gets in foul trouble, or Gortat and Harrell get in foul trouble, or even just Harrell gets in foul trouble, gets him on the court. And you're wagering all the other centers are bad, and it's sort of, puntable if necessary at center, which isn't the best idea, but
yeah.
It's if you still had 2 out of 150 on FanDuel, I wouldn't hate you. But DK is $3,600. You can load
much
it
different
now, see what news you get. I don't know if I'd rather play Gortat in cash, but I'd rather play Marjanovic in tournaments. If you want to run Gortat out there, he's going to have 6 25 fantasy point games this year. It will just eventually happen. He's just a big dude who will occasionally grab 10 rebounds and put some of them back for layups. And look, I got 20. It just happens. So he's cheap enough again on a day where you're not thrilled with center, where you're he's 3,400 on DK or something. You're not thrilled with that, and I don't want to do it. But he's not out of play for me. Less so because I like him so much, but because I'm I think he might get 20, and that might be perfectly good on this. So I'd rather Boban for on the same price and give myself an upside to picking up 35. But if I had to build, I don't think I'd have double center almost at all on DK today. So with me building in my 150 centers, I'd have some Gortat. I'd have, a lot of Jokic, I think, even on DK. I'd have some Capella at the DK price, but I'd have a little Gortat and a little Boban.
While we have like 880 people here, don't be afraid to hit that like button, guys.
Yeah.
Helps us out a ton. Not to mention, when we finish up here, head on over to, we have another show going on right now, Three Fellas Talking Football. Lofty, Ben, and Andrew talking about Showdown for tonight and for in the, Packers Seahawks. And then they'll just be talking Week 11 in general. So check it all out.
Yeah.
Back to this game. I don't have an overwhelming amount of it. I clearly have shares everywhere because it's a 3-game slate. The only other guy that I'm massively over the field on right now is Montrezl Harrell, and I'm a little uncomfortable about it. But he's been playing so well. I'd love to get your take on Montrezl.
Yeah, you're FanDuel mostly.
I am, and his price is significantly better on DK.
Yeah, it's you're planting a flag there. I don't look at it as a spot where I'm specifically thrilled with him. Like when we're getting up to 7,500, you're now threatening to limit him a little bit. But I do think it's a good spot for him. I do think he's getting in the high 20s in minutes for you again, and I would project him for 34, 35. So I don't think he kills you. If I had a word of warning there for paying 7,500 and having, I don't know, I guess you have like 35% Montrezl there, and I am intentionally mispronouncing his name, you really need him to hit the ceiling game. Like he's gotten, close to 50 once this year and cusped 40 a couple times. But like even, I'd project him for 35, 36, 37. I didn't have time to do the clips, but he would be in the mid 30s for me. And you're fine with that. But I'm a little more interested in Aldridge in the same game. I guess I would say I feel a little safer about it. You're now back to possibly looking at 3 centers for this Clips team. It's not an over the moon matchup. DK, I'm much more interested. At 7,500, it's like 600 more to get to Aldridge. I like Aldridge more than I like Montrezl, and I think he's just great in tournament lineups. And it's a 3-game slate, and you can pull 50 at him. He got very near 50 against Houston, one of the other Texas teams, not that long ago. So sure, you could get that. There's nothing wrong with playing him, but it's not a spot where I'd want to have 40% Montrezl because you really need to hit the ceiling. Like he's just not a guy who does a lot of defensive stats. So you need, 26 and 14 with an assist and a block to get him towards, hitting that 50 number for you. Cool. So I get where you're coming from. I don't think it's terrible, but it is at the point where you're pricing out the upside, I think.
Is there anybody else you want to touch on from the Clippers and Spurs side? DeMar DeRozan, perhaps, who at 8,900 I had very heavily yesterday. We're projecting 34% ownership on FanDuel. I don't have even remotely close to that. That makes me nervous, but there's got to be a place where I'm under somewhere, I guess.
No, I agree. That's a place I think I generally come in under. Like he's shown ceiling games, and of the 3 massive games he had at the beginning of the year, some were even in particularly difficult matchups. So I don't even like, pointing out that it isn't necessarily the best spot for him because he is a guy through just usage and sheer force of will can sort of make that a little more irrelevant there. But I'm not a big fan of, guards in this spot against the Clips. So you deal with, Derek White. I don't want to play on FanDuel. At that DK price, he's fine. I'm fine with that. Bryn Forbes, sure. At the ownership you're going to get him at, sure. I think I would rather Patty Mills if you're sort of looking at that spot. But those guys are in play in tournaments on a 3-game slate. I don't have a particularly strong take on them, but the matchup isn't that great. You get DeMar playing down a little bit more. That helps him a little bit, spends more time at what's largely the nominal 3, which I think helps him. So, DeMar DeRozan I'm fine with, but I think I would rather pay down there. Again, it's having if you're telling me Kevin Durant is 25% owned on this slate, maximizing my exposure to him is my priority. And every time I pay $9,000 for DeRozan, I'm making that more difficult. So it sounds crazy, but that is my largest. That's the largest single error I see in the population right now. It's because for Durant to screw me, I need him to not get 50-52. I mean, he's really expensive, and I find that really unlikely. And there's obviously all sorts of ranges of outcomes there, but he's just too low owned relative to what I think he should be. So he's the guy I would push hardest to be overweight on. And DeMar is going to have some ownership. It ends up being a little site dependent, but I don't have a strong take there. It seems perfectly equitable. I think he gets you, 35 to 45 most times. His value is going to have a lot to do with how Kevin Porter and Eric Gordon turn out to do for you, rather than how he turns out to do, I think.
You ready for questions?
Let's see. Feel ready to cycle into Avery Bradley, but not Luke Mahmoud if he plays. But Avery Bradley in tournaments on DK, if you get that news in time, put your guys in the right spots there so you have move. Gallinari is just way the hell too cheap on DK. I really like Danilo Gallinari. He's 58 or whatever. That's fine. I'm a real fan of his at that price.
Sure.
And the expected ownership. Toby's fine. Anyway, you ended up on Toby. I'd rather play Aldridge, where I think they're pretty similarly priced on FanDuel. I think there's only a $400 difference or so. A little more inclined towards Aldridge at those numbers. But $7K on DK, if he slotted into a lineup, I'd have no concern with it particularly, but I prefer Gallinari at his price. No, I think I talked on everyone. I had something to say. Let's do it.
Alrighty. Most recent question in the chat. Fantastic one. Clay and Lou or Baze and Clay? I'm not being funny. That's the question.
So Baze or Lou?
That's what I said.
Which is, yeah, I guess on FanDuel it sort of makes. So he's looking at FanDuel. He's looking into shooting guards on FanDuel. I would be more inclined to play Bazemore, especially at the raised price on once you take Taurean Prince out, and especially at the raised price on FanDuel, which people don't want to play. And again, price is less relevant in fewer games on the slate. The more 10-second version of this is the more guys are playing in the more games, the more perfect information you have, and the greater you can correlate pricing to production. When you have only 3 games and 27 relevant players playing fantasy DFS tonight, price doesn't matter that much. So when there's 13 games playing, there's enough guys going that, Kent Bazemore costing 6.5 instead of a 5.5 is really relevant because there's so many other guys in spots that can make him pay for that. But you're in a situation where it's just like, I just want points and I want low ownership, and certainly Bazemore can check both those boxes for you. So for me, I'm going to play Baze there over Lou.
Warriors starting lineup. Jones, Green, Durant, Thompson, Iguodala.
Whoa. Iguodala starting at the 1. All right. Get yourself some $3,900 Iguodala now. We didn't talk about Rudy Gay, who I think made a lot of sense on FanDuel, especially. Obviously, I think Iguodala is, I want to confirm Iguodala is small forward on FanDuel, but I'm pretty sure he's basically just small forward. He's shooting guard on FanDuel. Holy shit, your Kevin Porter life just got a little more interesting.
Yeah.
That's tough now. With how
crunch.
With how close that is to lock, I think you sort of windmill slam Iguodala at this point. Like he's okay. A couple games ago, they played the Clips. He got over 30 minutes in that game. He played mid-20s in the last game. Giving him the start and now knowing he's going to handle the ball that much and his ownership not being increased as it should be, I would get as much Iguodala into my lineups as I could right now. You're guaranteeing a minute's time. You're guaranteeing some usage. And he's cheap, and just the ownership won't react. So you could say 6 other things. I would completely divest my Quinn Cook. Obviously,
you shouldn't have had any Quinn Cook to begin with.
I agree. I didn't mention him for that reason. And again, it shows you how much of this game is just picking guys on the right day. Because again, not that many days ago, Quinn Cook was like my favorite guy on the slate, and it's just ownership and production and matchup and all those things. But obviously, get rid of all your Quinn Cook. But yeah, especially on FanDuel, 3,900. Load yourself up on some Iguodala. DK. See what positions eligible he is. For some reason, the DK, I think my guy logged me out. Small guard, shooting guard, small forward. Iggy to Wiggy, I think is a just excellent play there. So, yeah, I like Iguodala a lot. With this little time, I would do everything I can to get as much Iguodala in my lineups as I possibly could. I can't say it any better than that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I'm making my changes now. I hope I can get it in the next 4 minutes.
Okay. Throw me a question if you can, and I will talk it out as long as I can so that you can go back and work on the things on which you are working, if you know what I'm saying here.
Yeah. Mills or Forbes GPP?
Mills. I actually specifically looked that up before, and then I said it while we were doing it. I said I'd rather play Mills than Forbes. So Mills for me in that particular spot. They're very close, but if I had to play one of them, I would play Mills over Forbes in that spot.
Eric Gordon or Derek White?
Eric Gordon.
Iggy good for cash? I would say that is a very, very wholehearted yes.
Resounding yes. Get them in there.
Doug Dubs, $3,500 DK utility GPP. Have at it.
I'm going. GPP.
3,500 or under.
Names I don't hate. Leaving space for Avery Bradley, I don't hate, but have a plan. I'd like Bellinelli more than Bertans. I don't hate McKinney. Horder. I'd play Horder. It's my best answer to that question as we stand right now.
Clay or Tobias?
Tobias. I don't hate Clay, but the prices come up a fair bit. And we'll see a fair amount of defense. And I look for a Durant game, so I'm landing harder on that side of the equation. But, yeah.
Millsap or Tucker on FanDuel?
Millsap. I mean, it's $2,000, but Millsap.
Bembry or Lyles?
Bembry, I think, is a little better of those cash guys. I like both those guys just fine where you can play them. So it's going to depend on your correlation with other guys in your lineups. So I don't have the strongest take for that, unfortunately. But it's going to depend on where you ended up with other guys, unfortunately.
All right, I'm about to upload, so.
Okay,
you get about 30 seconds.
Yeah, I was about to say, you get about a minute, brother. Looking at other things.
I've got it in and pasted. All I have to do is upload, so I'm feeling good.
All right, throw me a QQ when you get a second.
Mason Plumlee ?
I think he's fine. I think he's absolutely reasonable. If you end up with Plumlee in any of your lineups, I have no issue with that whatsoever. He's not the greatest by any means, but I'm just fine with that play.
220 entries updated successfully. Mills or White? DK.
White.
Jamal Murray or Lamarcus? FanDuel GPP.
Jamal Murray.
God damn, people are asking questions that aren't basketball questions. Iggy or Bembry? DK single entry.
Iggy or Bembry? DK single entry. Iggy. At this point, you're just getting Iggy in there because the ceiling exists, and he will just be unowned relative to the possibility of pulling that out, and you just ride or die on that. I think is the correct play at this juncture.
Speaking of ride or die, we have just officially died. It is lock.
Death becomes us.
So now will be a very interesting time to find out
how owned my friend there is. Exactly. Okay,
how owned is Andre Iguodala right now?
Let's see. Yeah, if I was I'm on FanDuel. The person whose lineup I'm squatting didn't get him in time, so clicking lineups, 15.3% on the largest tournament on FanDuel, which is just exceptional for a starting point guard at 3,900. Again, you're going to get other guys handling the ball, and Durant's going to carry the water. But
I got 45% in 3,900, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, brilliant. And it sounds crazy, but one of the reasons I like doing the shows up to lock is being able to make those calls in 5 seconds as opposed to 45 seconds and having to think about, like, maybe I'm wrong. I believe the correct reaction, this was a simple one. I think the correct reaction was play all the Iguodala you can, go. Now, there's sometimes another guy is out and there's a situation with I like this guy better and this guy and his team gets worse. And being able to come up with that information on the fly is, 4 to 11 times a year, depending on how lucky you get, ends up making a pile of money for people in this, the Slack or the channel or whoever are listening to the show. This is the situation where I think most people would have come to the same conclusion pretty quickly. DK, 13.7% in the 425. So again, these 15% in all things almost certainly isn't going to kill you, and you just exposed yourself to a massive, massive upside.
Yeah, on FanDuel, I mean, for him to be at like 14% is ludicrous.
Yeah,
I'm honestly a little I could have happily taken a little bit more.
What's interesting is you have Gordon also at only 16% there. So you have by the way, I don't know what our ownerships were on. So on DK, Durant was 36%. So that number came in. Now, I don't know what our last adjustment to that was. He still came in under James Harden. Harden is 44. Durant is 36. So I'll take a look again at whatever
We had 36 for Harden and 26 for Durant, unless there was an update at like 6:30 or so that I didn't see.
I've got 37 Harden on our most recent one, 27 for Durant. So we did tick them both up. But the opening of all that extra value, including even Iguodala, people had time to make a double swap there. So those guys both came in heavier than we expected. But still a bigger fan of having Kevin Durant at 7% less ownership than Harden. I mean, I just think Harden, I'm going to be surprised if I see the upside game here. I think that, Clay and Durant know where he is at all times. They both do a fine job of guarding him and have an exceptional amount of practice doing it. Again, they did 7 games at 40 minutes a game each not that long ago, and obviously played several times last year. And I think other guys get there. That's one of the reasons I'm a fan of Gordon. I'm a fan of Paul at his price. Really hard to imagine he screws you at 8K. You might get 36 or something. Like, that's obviously very possible. There could be a blowout, but feels pretty safe at that number. But I like, just PJ Tucker to take a couple more shots than regular there.
How do you think Iguodala starting affects Houston?
Well, so they're now going to defensively have him and that's, by the way, which I guess I specifically should have mentioned before now, another reason to be really, really concerned about Harden. Because now there's nowhere for him to go. Like, their plan before was like, okay, we're going to do a switch and a switch and a switch, and eventually we're going to get him onto Quinn Cook, and then he's going to eat him like a Pop-Tart. That isn't even there anymore, and they're going to start with Iguodala on him. So your concern is this is a smart move. I will start with that. Iguodala, while older, certainly isn't washed, and like myself as an old man, is capable of putting up a good game of 28 minutes when he needs to once in a while. So, yeah, I think, their plan here is, let's really shut them down. Let's make them give all the shots to guys. Like, believe it or not, it ends up being better for James Ennis and PJ Tucker, because they're going to not allow them to run their primary offensive system that D'Antoni generally tries to run. So I think you're going to see a lot more of the drive kick swing, where you end up seeing more. Like, I would have at the start of this game projected, James Ennis for 7 shots and PJ Tucker for 6. I'd have them both closer to like 8.5 or 9 now.
I want to see what I had them at.
For shots? Yeah, I'm interested.
I had Tucker at 6.5 and Ennis at 5.
Okay, that's even when I said I had Ennis for 1 more, I thought they should probably be about even. And again, that was sort of top of my head calculation. But point being, I'll take the over on both those numbers now. I think is what you end up seeing here, both by nature of how they are guarded on switches and by extension how frequently they hit the shot clock. It also is a strong underbet move. Like, when you take Quinn Cook out of there and put Andre Iguodala on the court, you are sacrificing a lot of pace. You are slowing the game down. So if I was a sports bettor, I would have gotten that news and slammed an underbet on the game.
I'm not sure if you said it before. Does that concern you at all about Durant then? It's mildly.
It's not great news for Durant. I think it's a minor negative. It's a pace application issue. It is a greater chance of a blowout. I mean, this is a smart decision. You are now dealing with a team that they're going to spend a lot of time with the 3-4-5 of Ennis, Tucker, and Capella. That's 3 guys who can't create their own shot. Now we're going to put out 3 exceptional defenders in Iguodala, Clay, and Durant to smother the shit out of the other 3 guys. And let's see you put up 110 points, because we know we're going to. It's a fine plan. So yes, I'm less excited about Durant than I was before, but I'm more upset about Harden. So it still becomes proportionally still more excited spending that money on Durant. But I don't think this is good Durant news. You can make an argument as the guy out there most capable of creating his own shot that this is, positive news for him. Because again, I think this game stagnates a little bit more. You get a little bit more half court offense. So yeah, again, 3 game slate. There's only so many other options, but yes, at the end of the day, this was bad for Harden, a little bit less bad for Durant, good for Jokic just by like reflection. If you're spending $10,000 on somebody, good for DeRozan, good for Aldridge in the same way. There are so few options that every time you play a guy who costs $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, you are casting a vote against the other guys who cost $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. So yeah, when you slow this game down, increase the defensive presence, it ends up being a not huge, but relevant 1% statistical bonus to those other guys relative to their price tag. It's weird that way.
Sure. Quick plug, quick. I don't. God damn. One of those days. I just dropped the link in chat. Three fellas talking football going on right now. Go check it out. We had a question in Slack that's still pertinent.
Oh, please.
So, question is, if I'm playing Herder, Bembry, and Monty Morris, I should play Lyles over Len, correct? DK GPP.
Yes, that would be. You're already sort of making a wager that game blows out. So yes, I generally think that's fine. Now, in fairness, it's not that strong. Again, 3-game slate. You don't worry about that shit that much. And Len, I actually would project for a little bit more. So purely asking by correlation, using that as your standard for making that judgment, yes, you're correctly discerning how that would go. But I like Len a little bit more as a play, so I'm very meh on it.
Yeah.
Like I would be fine with either way you happen to land on that. You're talking about DraftKings, obviously, so there will be other people making changes. Such minor factors will play into this as whether or not Alex Len is starting officially. News hits at 8:07, 8:12, or 8:51 Eastern. Like if Len is starting, doesn't randomly tweet until 5 minutes before lock, then he ends up being 12% owned as opposed to 23. So there's still a lot of variability there. But end of the day, I don't much land on one side of that versus the other.
Yeah, I get where the question's going. I prefer Len in a vacuum, but
right. Yeah. But he's due to correlation, is this the better play? Yes. If we set aside, I didn't move my microphone up at all.
Oh, you sounded good to me.
I
didn't see anybody bitching.
I was animated. Well, that's just because they're good-natured people. I don't know if you know this about people in the DFS community. They never complain.
No, the YouTube chat generally filled with super normal people who are really polite.
We appreciate that you're here. Thank you for coming in on your birthday. Not a single. I can't remember the last time I heard someone in DFS complain.
Nope.
Not anything. Just a good-natured, happy to be alive, well-balanced, confident in their own selves, not so unconfident that they need to generate conflict with others. They understand that that's just a waste of time. Okay, moving on. Daddy
we've got a comment in our YouTube chat first, and then we'll hit this up.
Die in a fire, you Ponzi. No, what is it?
Tom Kennedy says, thanks for the Iggy news, guys. I locked him.
Good. Yeah, it sounds dumb, but with most people playing more GPPs than cash, your income over the course of the year has a ton to do with stuff like that, where it's just like, oh, wow, I can think of any number of times where we had, Bogut days and Bazemore days and other days where just news came out at this time and it was like, boom, we'll get this guy who in a vacuum should have been 40% owned, and you get him at, for example, Iguodala in a vacuum should be at the point at which, ownership versus price, opportunity, possibility of failure should be 45% owned today. He's 15% owned. That's a massive advantage. And if you can get that 5 or 6 times a year, is an absolutely huge, and prompts to the people. I didn't inherently catch that. I was watching TweetDeck, but I was reading a different tweet on something. So I got that secondhand. And I don't know if you got it secondhand, but real prompts to the people in our premium Slack chat or the YouTube chat or whomever was the first person to say, hey, this news, because it's critical for the team. If you buy the 1,000 people watching this show an extra 30 seconds, that's great. And I like it when people help the team, because while we're a large group of people, and especially in the premium Slack, the several hundred guys we have in there working all day, you're not so large a group that it's not worth the camaraderie versus the I made my dollar worth a penny less. Like there were times during summer league and postseason where, even like our premium channel, just our subscribers at FanVice represented like 30% of the entries. And so people made a reasonable argument like, look, because at that point there were only a couple people doing basketball, and I probably had the largest singular following. So if you walked into our chat and said, hey, I have this news, you're arguably costing yourself a significant amount of money. That's not the case when you look at the ownerships we're talking about tonight, where you have tournaments with 50,000 entries. We're 4% of that, or 6% of that, or some number at which you're really not screwing yourself and you're doing everyone a solid. So long way around of me saying, hey, thumbs up, whomever was the first person to yell that out, because I didn't get it primarily. I got it secondarily through that news. So thanks.
There you go.
So some ownerships real quick, these being DK in the largest tournament. Someone's username is Yo Daddy now. I got to wonder if that's reference to this. James Harden, 44%. Betty does not like. Again, I think it's fine. It's a one game sample, so If he randomly gets 70, I'm going to look bad. But I think more often than not, I would want to be lower than that. Kevin Durant, 36%. Daddy likes. I'm a fan of that number. Capella, 34%. That's about right. 7K is just a little too cheap for him. The other center options are kind of specious. I'm fine. That's about right. Chris Paul, 33%. Daddy likes. I don't want to be over that. Klay Thompson, 22. That's about right when his price climbs into the sevens. PJ Tucker, 20. It's about right. Iguodala, 14%. Daddy. Eric Gordon, 12%. Daddy likes being over that. Quinn Cook, 7.4%. Yay! Thanks. You paid the rake. That's pretty good. He's going to play 16 minutes now, and I'd project him for 14 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points maybe. Draymond Green, 6%. Daddy like. James Ennis the third, 5.5%. Daddy likes. Jarebko, 3%. That's fine. Kevon Looney, 2%. That's fine. Gary Clark, 1%. That's fine. You got to hope he's 100%. He gets back towards that 30 minutes we were seeing, but he's like 38. So FanDuel, much less interest due to some of the other options. But Gary Clark on DK at 1% feels good. Sean Livingston, 0.6. Damian Jones, 0.45. Jordan Bell, 0.2. McKinney, 0.16. Jordan Green, 0.12. Did someone play themselves? Carmelo Anthony, 0.01%. Congratulations. You played yourself. That's a good one.
That's
Melo got in there. The Melo share. There's also a DeMarcus Cousins share, which is just somebody forgot to.
Yeah, he's got a better chance of getting a bucket today than Melo does.
He's got a better chance of getting ejected today.
That's probably true.
Proven that.
In fact, that is 100% true.
Yeah, he did it once this year. He was just getting warmed up for the season.
Yeah.
Some FanDuel ownerships, I'm just going to click around and look at a couple. Durant, 55 to Harden's 37. So, okay. Well, yeah.
I've got Durant 46% in this tournament. The ownership that I'm in here. I played 37, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you're around there. Again, I will not explain my Durant reasoning for the 11th time. People have to be getting bored. Chris Paul, 40% seems about right. FanDuel, by the way, largest tournament. Quinn Cook, 16%. Thank you. That feels good.
Yeah, if that were formerly like $3,800 Quinn Cook, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, at least I get to drop it. Now that he's 5,800, I mean, that is a major problem for those lineups.
Yeah, that is, those guys all of a sudden, you can still get there. I mean, I hear people all the time who are like, they talk about expensive guys. Like, if I have to drop Anthony Davis, at least I'm still alive. No, you're not.
No, you're dead.
You might be alive to catch him in cash. Like, you can hope for that, but whenever, just your basic GPP theory is you need to have a lineup that can win. Yeah. If you don't put yourself in a position to win the 100K where it's a reasonable possibility, roughly on par with the field, you've sacrificed so much equity that it goes from already being a tournament with a pretty onerous 15-16% rake to being functionally a tournament with a 24% rake. And like, okay, you don't want any of that. That's going to empty very, very quickly. So Draymond, 13%. That feels pretty good. Iguodala 15 again. That feels exceptional. Tucker up to 30. So again, hardly sneaky on a 3-game slate there. I suspect the guys I would have more interest in here. Certainly don't have quarter ownership yet. That's gonna be an interesting one, especially with the 15% of people moving on to Iggy, which I'm guessing was like 7% before lock, 8. So I'm guessing that about doubled. But again, that's 80% of people misplayed there. Assuming that if the field had perfect information, you would have had. I'll again go with 40% Iguodala, and that before lock you had about 8% when he was just sort of a shooting guard pawn at $3,900 who was going to get in the mid-20s in minutes, do some backup ball handling, and have some upside on FanDuel steals and the like. 32% should have switched to him, and about 8% did. So 80% of people did not optimally manage their lineups. If you did, congratulations. Like, you need to have an edge these days to be able to win with such significant rake, and you got there today. So whether or not you win, you played ideally, and that should always be your concern. The wins will come. You want to do as well as you can. That's one of the reasons I try to do the review periscopes most days. You look back and like, all right, did I screw this up? Where did I, make a mistake? But hopefully you didn't. Kevin Durant on the board. Look at that, 26 seconds in. Bucket.
Well, I'm going to go watch that game.
Sounds good. Sounds like a good plan. So
Happy birthday again, sir.
Thanks very much. It's been a great one. All I want for my birthday is someone here to take down 100K. So tweet that at me, and I will retweet it.
I wish it could be me. I don't have that. It wouldn't even be possible. Not in a tournament that could pay me 100K, but I'd be happy to take it.
You're not playing the slot machine at all, which is their big tournament tonight on FanDuel?
No.
Interesting. Talk to me about that. Give me just 30 seconds on not playing the largest GPP.
You're greatly overestimating how much money I play in a given night.
Well, I assumed you would have some number of. So you're just running out like 150x quarters and $1 or something. Like,
Yeah,
talk to me.
I jam in as much as I can in the lowest possible stakes I can.
Interesting. Don't get me wrong. That may be the more disciplined and correct way to do it. I'm just saying
like I don't ever put shit. Like if I'm not entering the maximum amount of entries that I can in the tournament, I am not in that tournament.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I might put like a Millie Maker NFL lineup in randomly, but that's not like. Obviously, you realize that's not the same thing. You understand. That's more for like drinking at a bar.
Yeah, that's for. There's nothing wrong with playing DFS for fun.
Yeah,
if playing any qualifier is a bad idea. Now, you're never going to turn to me and be like, I'm playing this qualifier for anything, and that's a good ROI move. It probably isn't.
I have a caveat, but I know you'll agree with it. They overlay like crazy.
Oh well, then yeah, obviously that.
I won a ticket to the I don't remember what it's called, the Super Slam or something stupid 444 tournament on FanDuel. I won the satellite for it last night. And
I don't even
it was a $2,200 or 2,200 person satellite that got like 850 people in it.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I think we're on the same page on playing those. Yeah, don't play them. Don't play them if they fill.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with playing a qualifier per se because it's a qualifier a satellite. I'm saying they are generally tournaments that have first place getting 63% of the prize field or 41%.
Oh, it's a really
that's a bad idea. But if that tournament has a negative rake, then that more than overcomes my other concerns. So yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, I mean they're super top heavy.
2 buckets for Durant. They can't handle them.
All right.
They have no answers.
I'm gonna go watch that and hope that my wife can actually make it home tonight.
Is she on like a commando mission in the Congo?
She was in Boston traveling for work.
Ooh, it's snowy.
Yeah, so couldn't land in LaGuardia. They landed in Syracuse, and now she's been on the runway in Syracuse for 2 hours just to get back to LaGuardia.
So go Kevin Durant, boo James Harden, and I'll be back to see everybody again tomorrow.
Happy birthday, man. We're out of here. Thanks, everybody. Like the video if you're still here. Bye.